Thank you for joining the Adult Drug Court Program Performance Measurement Training. My name is Jimmy Stein, the lead analyst for the Drug Court Program. Before we get into the training, Gregory Terrain from BJA's Policy Office would like to say a few remarks. Go ahead, Greg.
All right, thank you, Jimmy. Like I said, hello, everyone. This is Gregory Terrain, the Policy Advisor for the Adult Drug Court Discretionary Grant Program. I want to thank you for attending today's Drug Court PMT training. I want to briefly speak to the importance of grantee reporting to BJA from both a programmatic and policy perspective. From a programmatic perspective, it helps BJA in developing reports and products for grantees, such as the Grant Feedback Report, which provides a summary report of the collective impact of all BJA drug courts. Once that information is collected, BJA posts the information to our website, and a copy is emailed to our grantees, which is you. These reports let us know what programmatic successes to highlight. Reporting in PMT helps meet grantees' programmatic reporting requirements, and it assists with tracking metrics that are needed for sound program management. From a policy perspective, grantee concerns and attention to performance reporting helps to continually improve the quality of what's reported, which in turn assists BJA in knowing what works. From that information, BJA is able to make data-driven decisions, report to for external stakeholders, such as Main Justice, auditors, Office of Management and Budget, and the White House. It also supports programs with facts and figures to legislators on the Hill, and it also helps us to justify programmatic spending to be able to increase the funding that we have each year. With that said, it's very important that you submit your reports in a timely and accurate manner. I'd like to pass it back over to you. And again, thank you everyone for participating and attending today's training. Pass it back to you, Jimmy.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate those comments. Now let's get into the rest of the training content, starting with the learning objectives. At the end of this training, you should walk away with a better understanding of why BJA requires you to report performance measures and how we use this information. During the training, you'll get an in-depth review of drug court-specific reporting requirements as we go through the performance measures questionnaire. After I've reviewed the purpose of the measures and walked you through the questions, I will turn it over to one of our TTA specialists to review how you'll be reporting these items in the PMT system. Performance management is a process that leverages ongoing data collection to determine whether a program is implementing activities as intended and achieving its desired goals and objectives. Using performance measures that capture inputs, outputs, and outcomes over time, performance management enables pre- and post-comparisons that can be used to assess change. For more information, we invite you to visit the OJP Grant Performance Measurement and Progress Reporting Information portal at ojp.gov/performance. Performance management helps BJA and its grantees understand their progress toward key goals and objectives. We use performance measures to 1, identify successes and opportunities for improvement, 2, track grant activity and progress to inform decision-making, 3, understand funding decisions and their impact on BJA's strategic plan, and 4, because it is required to comply with the Government Performance and Results Modernization Act. This slide shows an example of a forthcoming report generated from the performance measure data you report. It shows a screenshot of a couple of pages of an annual program report that uses quantitative and qualitative performance data to provide a high-level summary of grantee activity and achievement at the program level. These types of reports are posted on BJA's website and are shared with a variety of audiences, including OJP and BJA leadership, Congress, and the general public. Performance measures are useful to you as a grantee as they are for us at BJA. Performance measures are developed with input from a variety of stakeholders, including grantees, and are directly related to the requirements of your grant award. They help us understand each of your projects so we can help you continue to improve them over the life of your award by providing targeted training and technical assistance through the Training and Technical Assistance Provider, which in this case is NADCP. The first page of each performance measure questionnaire outlines additional resources that may be helpful as you report. It includes reminders about the program's goals and objectives, and lists contact information for the BJ PMT Help Desk and state policy advisors if you need to reach out with any questions. The measures are ultimately there to assess your progress toward the drug court's program's goals, which we will discuss in a later slide. We also have a reporting tip on this slide. These reporting tips may appear throughout the presentation where we think there is additional information that can help clarify PMT reporting. This one highlights some grantees, this one highlights some information where it's easier to track the required data outside of the PMT in a smaller time increments, maybe by week or by month, and then add it all together when it is time to report in the PMT to get the reporting period totals. We strongly encourage you to use whatever approach it makes easiest for you to report your totals each reporting period. The drug court questionnaire consists of these question types. There are minor differences between implementation grants and the enhancement grants. Note that states that are funded under subcategory B and subgrant funds to local courts will need to create subgrant profiles in the PMT and assign measures. You can connect them to either implementation or the enhancement questionnaire. Statewide grantees that are conducting research or evaluation have a much smaller questionnaire. Please do not create subawards for these types of subgrants or contracts. Rather, the state grantee should report on behalf of the research team directly in the PMT. With all that in mind, let's look at the goals of the drug court program as defined in the drug court solicitation. I highlighted a few key components of the goal statement in this slide. Related to the drug court goal statements are certain objectives. Performance measures are tied to each of these objectives. The first objective, to provide a mechanism to assess potential participants for their risk level and social and psychological needs. Drug courts use a variety of risk and/or needs assessment tools. Secondly, all drug court programs are to focus on programming around the substance abuse problems of participants. Additional programming will focus on the cognitive, behavioral, social, and vocational needs of the offender. Urinalysis or some other form of drug testing is also required. It should be periodic and random, including pre- and post-program. Finally, incentives and sanctions should be applied appropriately, all while considering the long-term community reintegration and support services that are needed by the participants. To see how these objectives align with the performance measures, this slide details certain drug court objectives. First, the first objective, which is to implement or expand drug court services, we look at overall enrollment, completion, and non-completion rates. For the second objective, we look at the utilization of screening and assessment tools, length of time in program, and the availability of a certain array of services. We recognize that programs will differ in their design and implementation, in particular in the array of services that can be offered. Finally, the last objective is straightforward in that we are looking at the drug and alcohol testing. Now let's look at a few definitions. The types of drug courts that are defined are adult, hybrid DWI or drug court, co-occurring, veterans treatment courts, DWI or DUI courts, or tribal courts. Let's go through some definitions of the types of courts that receive the adult drug court discretionary grant. First, we have the common type of drug court, adult. An adult drug court is a specially designed criminal court calendar or docket, the purpose of which are to achieve a reduction in recidivism and substance abuse among nonviolent substance abusing offenders and increase the likelihood of successful rehabilitation. Interventions include early, continuous, and intensive judicially supervised treatment, mandatory periodic drug testing, community supervision, and the use of appropriate sanctions, incentives, and rehabilitation services. Next, we have a co-occurring court. Similar to the drug court model, co-occurring courts offer treatment for participants with co-occurring substance use and mental disorders, dual diagnoses, and include specialized dockets for these persons. Key features of these courts include case management services with 24-hour crisis response capability, integrated treatment that may include medication, mental health, care, housing, social services, family and peer support, and may address hygiene, nutrition, sleep, medical, and dental needs, and multidisciplinary team members, including the judge, who are cross-trained in co-occurring disorders. Next, we have a DWI-DUI court. A DWI court is a post-conviction court docket dedicated to changing the behavior of the alcohol or drug-dependent repeat offender or high blood alcohol content offender arrested for driving while impaired. The goal of the DWI court is to protect public safety while addressing the root causes of impaired driving. DWI courts utilize a team of criminal justice professionals, including prosecutors, defense attorneys, probation officers, and law enforcement, along with substance abuse treatment professionals to systematically change participant behavior. Like drug courts, DWI courts involve extensive interactions with the judge and the offenders to hold the offenders accountable for their compliance with court supervision and treatment conditions. You can find DWI or DUI publications at dwicourts.org. Another common court is a hybrid DWI-DUI court. This is a specialized court that accepts both drug court and DWI cases. The next court is the fastest growing court in our system today, which are Veterans Treatment Courts. Veterans Treatment Courts use a hybrid integration of drug court and mental health court principles to serve military veterans and sometimes active duty personnel. They promote sobriety, recovery, and stability through a coordinated response that involves collaboration with the traditional partners found in drug courts and mental health courts, as well as the Department of Veteran Affairs, healthcare networks, Veterans Benefits Administration, state departments of Veteran Affairs, volunteer veterans mentors, and organizations that support veterans and veterans' families. A Veterans Treatment Court is different from a Veterans Treatment Track. A track is a specialized docket that was created in an existing drug court to serve a specific population. There is a Veterans 10 Key Components. You can find this publication at www.ndcrc.org or justiceforvets.org. And lastly, we have Tribal Healing to Wellness Courts. Tribal courts are unique courts in that these courts do not just handle alcohol or other drug abuse cases, but rather is a component of the tribal justice system that incorporates and adapts the wellness concept to meet the specific substance abuse needs of each tribal community. There's a Tribal 10 Key Components. You can find this publication at www.wellnesscourts.org. So here are some examples. Your court may have more than one type of participant served. Let's go over some common types of programs. You are an adult court, but you serve some veterans on a different track, meaning not with the regular population, and they receive other services besides the basic adult drug court participants, meaning PTSD or TBI treatment, VA services, etc. This would mean you're an adult court with a veterans track. Another program would be an adult drug court that serves both drug and DUI DW offenders. This would be a hybrid DWI/drug court. Another popular program is a adult court that is able to deal with substance abuse and mental health issues of each participant. This would be a co-occurring court. You're able to deal with substance abuse and also offer mental health services. Finally, a program that serves the adult population but offers some family services such as family therapy or counseling or parenting classes may classify themselves as an adult court with a family track. If you have any questions on how to classify your court, you can contact the PMT Help Desk and we can help you determine what to mark. PMT reporting is mandated to be award-based. In other words, BJA must collect performance data on each federal award and those associated activities. There are 3 PMT questionnaires for the 3 different types of grants. Subgrantees to courts of statewide grants must be assigned to either implementation or enhancement questionnaires. In states in the solicitation that are all drug courts must follow the 10 key components of the drug court model. You can find this publication at www.ndcrc.org. Just type in 10 key components in the search box and it will pop up. The first question is about whether you are getting ready to close out your award. When approaching your award end date and you don't expect any extensions, please select yes. This is a flag in the system telling it that you will be creating your final PMT report. Only select a yes when you are sure you are going to start the award closeout process. The second question relates to whether you have conducted reportable grant activity. This is another flag for the PMT. If you select no, then you are not required to go through all the PMT questions. Rather, you would just report on the narrative questions if it were in January or July. Selecting no tells BJA that you did not have any reportable grant activity. If you select no, you will then be required to give some more detail about why you do not have grant activity. Note that the subgrantees do not have to respond to the narrative questions. The geographic location of your court should be based on the population of the area and the jurisdiction in which you serve. For the next question, this is considered a baseline question. You should report on the number of drug court participants that you expect to serve over the life of the grant award. This value should correspond to what was reported in the grant application. If you need to change your response to this question, please contact the PMT Help Desk and inform your grant manager. Earlier in this training, we discussed the definitions of each type of specialty court. You may select more than one option, but please be as specific as possible. As already noted, if you create a new track within an existing court, only report on that specific track if you're using your BJA grant funds to create that new track. For these questions, BJA uses these questions to understand the general age of your drug court. If you have received multiple drug court awards, for the first question, please record your response based on the current award, not the previous awards. For these questions, please respond based on your established policies and/or procedures. First, please report whether you have a formal policy for the use of graduated sanctions and incentives. This policy should be written down. Second, please report whether you use random and observed drug or urinalysis testing. Again, the policy should be written down. Finally, report on whether you are using evidence-based treatment services. I would like to reassure you that your responses to these questions will not impact your grant funding. BJA does use this information in the aggregate to understand how the BJA-funded courts implement these concepts. Next, I'm going to briefly go over a few questions that are only reported by enhancement grants in the next few slides. These questions are intended to help BJA understand what types of services BJA funds are providing. These first two questions relate to inpatient and outpatient treatment slots added by BJA grant funds. Only report data on these if BJA grant funds are used for providing either inpatient or outpatient services. If yes, report on the number of inpatient or outpatient treatment slots added. A slot is a space or position used to determine the number of individuals who can be provided services based on available staff and program funds to deliver those services. For this question, report on whether new case management or supervision staff were added using BJA grant funds. Please only report on a new staff position that was added once. These next three questions pertain to whether BJA grant funds are used to provide treatment services. Only report on these questions if grant funds are used to pay for the services. Otherwise, select no. Only report the services delivered to new drug court participants. This enables us to get an unduplicated count on the number of people that get treatment services from BJA funds. The next question pertains to inpatient treatment services. Again, only report yes if BJA funds are used to provide these services. If yes, we are looking for the total number of days delivered for inpatient services. For example, if 2 people receive 30 days of inpatient treatment, you should report 60 days. Recovery support services include, but are not limited to, employment services, housing, education, mental health services, which includes medical and/or dental services, trauma treatment, veteran services, and other pro-social services. If you provide other types of services using BJA funds, please select Other and describe in the provided text box. If BJA grant funds are supporting other components of your drug court program, please report that here. If you select No to any of the previous questions for adding treatment or recovery support services, then we would expect for you to let us know the other ways in which grant funds are used to support your program. These questions relate to your access to medication-assisted treatment. And these are required of both implementation and enhancement grantees. For the first question, please select one or the other, not both. We ask that you be as descriptive with your selection as possible. Otherwise, in the next question, you can select, or in this question, you can select C, D, or E, or any combination of the 3. If you select C, D, or E, then the last question is required. That requires a count of those people that were determined to be appropriate for medication-assisted treatment during that reporting period, and of those, the number of individuals receiving at least 1 treatment. So again, we're trying to get at an unduplicated count. Note that we are counting at the person level, not the treatment level. The participant level measures include questions on the following: screening and program intake, risk assessment, participants receiving services, drug court enrollment, program completion, alcohol and substance involvement, and court and criminal involvement, which are required at closeout. These questions ask about the number of offenders that are screened for participation in your drug court program. A screening determines the eligibility and appropriateness for participation in a drug court. Please consider where your referrals come from and set up appropriate tracking mechanisms to track all offenders that are screened. The next question asks about those that are screened but did not enroll in the drug court program. Following that question, we ask about the reasons that individuals did not enroll in the drug court program. For this question, please select the option that best fits for each person that did not enroll. If an offender falls into multiple categories, please select only one that best fits and describe their situation. The sum of individuals reported in this question should be equal to the number reported in the previous question. You will also be inputting the race, ethnicity, and gender of drug court participants and those screened for eligibility for the following: screened but did not enroll, newly admitted, successfully completed, exited unsuccessfully. According to the NADCP's Drug Court Standards, Volume 1, citizens who have historically experienced sustained discrimination or reduced social opportunities because of their race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, sexual identity, physical or mental disability, religion, or socioeconomic status receive the same opportunities as other citizens to participate and succeed in the drug court. This includes standards on the following: equivalent access, equivalent retention, equivalent treatment, equivalent incentives and sanctions, equivalent dispositions, and team training. While performance data is not collected on all of these themes, BJA does recognize their importance, and through these measures encourages data collection on race, ethnicity, and gender on important stages of the drug court program. As noted in the previous slide, ethnicity, race, and gender information is collected at the following stages: screening into admissions, graduations, and unsuccessful exits. This matrix is repeated throughout the questionnaire at each of these stages. Note that BJA distinguishes between ethnic origin, focusing on Hispanic or Latina, and race. An ethnic group or ethnicity is a population group whose members identify with each other on the basis of common nationality or shared cultural traditions. The term race refers to the concept of dividing people into populations or groups based on various sets of physical characteristics, which usually results from genetic ancestry. This series of questions pertain to the use of risk and/or needs assessment tools used by grantees. Please only report the results of screening and assessment of those offenders that are newly admitted into the program. When naming the risk and/or needs assessment instrument, please be specific. If you pay for a service to complete the assessment, or if it is done outside of the jurisdiction of the court, please see if you can get a data sharing agreement in place to track this information. The number reported here should be equal to the number of newly admitted participants each quarter, so we can get an accurate accounting of the risk need profile in BJA-funded courts. This question is a snapshot in time count of your enrollment numbers. This question just helps to understand the size or magnitude of your program. Point-in-time counts enable us to look at the total enrollment at certain points in time throughout the year. At the end of the reporting period is a point-in-time count. So here is a data entry tip that can be used as a guide. But to be more clear, I want to use this example. If we wanted to know the number of people in my program as of the last day of the reporting period, I would count the number of persons actively enrolled in the drug court program on December 31, 2017. There may be more or less people in the program on December 30th or January 1st due to graduations and new admissions, but we are just wanting that snapshot and count time on December 31st, 2017. Newly means that the offender has not enrolled in the drug court through the BJA-funded program prior to the existing reporting period. Remember that we will compare this number to the number of persons assessed for risk or need that we discussed earlier. Ideally, the number for each question would be equal, not accounting for slight differences between reporting periods. Remember that ethnicity, race, and gender will be reported for each newly enrolled participant. These questions ask about the number of participants that complete all program requirements or graduate from the drug court program. Unmet financial obligations should not disqualify a participant from graduating a drug court. The next question asks about the number of months graduates participate in the program before completion. A drug court program generally lasts from 6 to 12 months, but please report all graduates in the category that best fits their length of stay in the program. Again, remember that ethnicity, gender, and race will also be reported for each graduate. Just to review our definitions. First, the term successfully completed. This is someone who completes all requirements of the program, excluding financial obligations. We know that some courts it is required that all financial obligations must be met before a participant has been considered a graduate. But for this questionnaire, please count those who have completed all components even if they still owe money. Next, we are going to go over the questions for those participants that unsuccessfully exit the program. Unsuccessful exit means that participants did not complete all the requirements of the drug court program and is no longer participating in the program. This question asks about individuals that did not complete and are no longer enrolled or receiving services in the drug court program. We ask about the reasons why participants leave the program unsuccessfully. This, combined with the next question and the previous length of stay question, are retention measures. Further, a key measure that we look at is program completion, which takes into account the number of persons completing successfully versus those that exit unsuccessfully. Please make sure to count each person only once in the category that best fits. For each person that exits without graduating, please report how long they stayed in the drug court program from enrollment to program termination. Remember that for each person that leaves without graduating or unsuccessfully, you will also need to report the ethnicity, race, and gender. Here is an example of how we use the data reported to calculate graduation rate performance measures. For this, we take the participants completing successfully and divide that by the number of people leaving the program both successfully and unsuccessfully. These next two questions ask about participants that were drug tested during the reporting period. Please only count an individual once during the reporting period. Further, if a person was tested more than once and they were clean the first test, then dirty in the next, and they should be counted as a positive test in the following question. Now we're going to talk about the court and criminal involvement closeout questions. These are only answered once prior to closing out your grant. The responses are based on the number of participants in the program over the life of the award. The court and criminal involvement section is to be completed once when the federal award is closing out. This is triggered when you respond yes to the first closeout question of the questionnaire. This section is our attempt at gaining some insight into the post-program behavior and outcomes by former drug court participants. The responses are based on the number of participants in the program over the life of the award. This question helps us to establish the denominator or baseline for the table in the next question. Excuse me. The number of participants still in the drug court program is a point-in-time count of the number of people still enrolled at closeout. Successfully completed is the total number of graduates from your program based on the start and end dates of your awards. Finally, exited unsuccessfully is the total number of participants that exited without graduation over the life of the federal award. In the case of subawards, this could be based on the state award start and end dates. This question refers to the number of former participants released into the community who were either charged, convicted, or their probation/parole was revoked for committing a crime or technical violation. We anticipate that you are able to access and use administrative records for this information. The follow-up timeframes are 0 to 12 months and 12 to 24 months. Please note that the rows are mutually exclusive. Please count individuals in only one row. However, please note that individuals may be counted in more than one column. Next, we're going to talk about the Affordable Care Act questions that have been added as a supplement to the questionnaires. Health insurance eligibility rules have not changed at the federal level despite Congress's ongoing efforts to do so. ACA implementation has varied across states, so it is incumbent upon program administrators to know the Medicaid eligibility as well as private insurance eligibility of those that you are providing services for. This question of the ACA measures falls under the Direct Services section. This question directs people to either fill out the full ACA measures or, if grantees do not provide direct services, to skip the module. If grantees select yes, we provide direct services, they move on to the next question. This table calls for the number of drug court program participants, including new participants that have any type of health care coverage and those with Medicaid coverage. Note that we ask that you, that you enter the number of people that are eligible for any type of health care coverage. This question is similar to the previous, but instead of focusing on new/current participants, this question focuses on participants who exited the program during the most recent reporting period. For this table, we want to learn the following about the reporting period. How many program participants, both new and older, with older meaning those participants from previous reporting periods who are still in the program at the time of their exit from the program, were eligible for A, any health care coverage, and B, of those eligible at their exit for any health care coverage, how many were also found to be eligible for Medicaid coverage? And then next, how many program participants, both new and older, at their exit from the program were enrolled in either A, any healthcare coverage, and B, of those enrolled in any healthcare coverage, how many were also enrolled in Medicaid coverage? This question wants to know how many participants who exited your program during the reporting period left knowing they were eligible for healthcare or Medicaid coverage, or left the program already enrolled in healthcare or Medicaid coverage. Those who exit enrolled in healthcare and or Medicaid coverage would include participants who are enrolled in those types of healthcare coverage while in your program, or participants who entered your program already having the coverage. Lastly, we have 7 narrative questions asked of all BJA grantees. You will respond to these twice a year and at the end of your grant award. These questions also allow you to add additional details or information about the data you've reported to provide a fuller picture of your activities. Again, subgrantees are not required to answer these questions. However, the state should know what activities are occurring at the local level and may want to incorporate that into their responses for these questions. The 7 narrative questions are required every 6 months. These questions will be covered in more detail later on in this presentation. Now we are going to briefly talk about the statewide grantee questionnaire. These are questions that apply to statewide grantees that may be using the funds for research or information system enhancements, rather than subgranting funds to subawards. The statewide questionnaire consists of 7 basic questions about grant activity, training, evaluation, research, and MIS enhancements. The 7 narrative questions are also required. Please respond yes to the first question if BJA funds were used to provide training to drug court staff or staff that interact with drug court participants as part of your drug court team. Note that we do not want the number of mentors, volunteers, or interns. We ask for the number of staff that have completed the training, and of those, the number who rated the training as satisfactory or better. If you are sending staff to training or providing training locally, you should plan to assess the satisfaction level of the training. Any types of research, even if it is not strictly considered evaluation, can be reported in this question. Updates about the progress of the evaluation or research should be provided on a quarterly basis by selecting yes to A, and then using the text box to give updates. If any grant funds are used to improve data collection systems, please report that here. Again, updates can be given on a quarterly basis about the status of those updates. We are now going to switch gears and discuss a few common reporting challenges. When funding one program with multiple federal awards, please do not duplicate. This can be done by using the prorating method. I have also seen where some grantees report all data under one award and then leave a comment in the other federal award that all activity is reported under a different federal award number. They then attach both PMT GMS reports to GMS under both federal awards. If you do this, please check with your grant program manager if this is okay with them. Subrecipients that are operating a court should be set up as a subaward. States can report on behalf of the subgrantee or have them report themselves. Projects that are related to research or system enhancements can be reported by the state on behalf of the research team. As noted earlier, please only report the assessment results of new participants and not the total enrolled population. Enter 0 if you are not using an assessment instrument, but if that is the case, please tell us so in the open text box. Data collected in the PMT is reviewed and analyzed regularly to determine the consistency, validity, and reliability of the data. Aggregate values are calculated and frequencies are conducted on each indicator to identify out-of-range values. Grantees reporting out-of-range values are contacted directly to confirm or correct reported data that appear incorrect in the PMT. Please respond as soon as possible if contacted for a validation so that we can ensure the accuracy of your data. That concludes the question-by-question review of the performance measures questionnaires. I will now turn it over to one of our help desk specialists, Derek, to review the PMT system.
All right, great. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you for your words. We're now going to transition to the system portion of the presentation. First, I'm going to go over the different types of performance measures that you will enter into the PMT questionnaire. Afterwards, I will go over the PMT reporting schedule, and then we're going to cover some system navigation aspects of the performance measurement tool. So let's get started. So at this time, let's go over some commonly used terms that are seen throughout the PMT. We are going to frequently refer back to these terms throughout the remainder of today's session. So the PMT uses specific terminology to refer to persons, organizations, and concepts. A grantee is the primary recipient of a federal award from BJA. This is the organization or the party who submits the application to BJA for federal funding. A grant or award is the funding given to grantees by BJA. A subrecipient is the secondary recipient of a federal award, which they receive from a primary grantee. The data that the subrecipients enter into the PMT should be reviewed by the primary grantee. The project description is a description of the BJA-funded project that serves as the basis of the grant application. The project description details the purpose of the project and funding. A reporting period is the period of time in which BJA-funded activities were conducted and funds were expended and obligated. Reporting periods are also referred to as quarters, as they make up a 3-month reporting period. So let's use an example. The Performance Measurement Tool Department of Justice receives a grant from BJA, which makes them a grantee. They use some of the money they receive from BJA, which is their grant, to fund their project activities, and use the remaining part of their grant to fund a local law enforcement organization. Local law enforcement organization would now be considered a subrecipient of the Performance Measurement Tool Department of Justice. The outline of the BJA funded activities that will be conducted by both the grantee and subrecipient should be captured in the project description, which again is detailed in the grant application. And finally, the data collected by the grantee and subrecipient should be reported for each quarterly reporting period that the grant or subgrant is active. So as mentioned in the earlier part of the training, the questions in the PMT are made up of 2 main categories. The first is the quantitative program performance measures. This is where you enter the numeric data you collected over the course of the reporting period. An example of this question could be, how many dollars were spent on law enforcement equipment during the reporting period? The second section are the qualitative narrative section. And these questions are open-ended and do not require a numeric response, although you can provide one. The narrative questions that are answered during the April to June and October to December reporting periods fall into this category. An example of this type of question could be, what type of equipment was purchased with BJA funding during this reporting period? Or what challenges did you face in completing your program goals during this reporting period? Remember that these questions are meant to capture the full experience you have with conducting activities with BJA funds, so the more information that you provide, the better. The quantitative data you report is used to establish baselines, track performance against program goals, and create a nationwide picture of numeric data for BJA. The narrative questions give grantees a chance to express in their own words how their experience has been conducting program activities with BJA funding. And both of these categories are equally important for your reporting, so you should take every possible measure to ensure the accuracy and integrity of your data. Next, we're going to go over the specific types of reports that are generated in the PMT. Okay, sorry about that. So, as you may know, the PMT collects data for a 3-month period of activity referred to as a reporting period. Okay, so referred to as a reporting period. So you have 30 days after the close of the reporting period to enter data into the PMT. After you complete your data entry, you'll be prompted by the PMT to generate a report of this information. So every 6 months, grantees are required to upload a semi-annual report into GMS, which is also generated from the PMT. The semi-annual report is uploaded as an attachment to your progress report, which is uploaded into the grants management system. And that is due once in January and once in July. And those semi-annual reports contain the narrative questions that we mentioned throughout the earlier portions of the presentation. Closeout or final reports should only be completed once all grant funding has been expended and will need to be uploaded to GMS as well. As a reminder, all of these reports are always available in the PMT for you to create and save as many times as needed. You should also keep in mind that BJA reviews grantees' report status and data every quarter to ensure validity and compliance with your reporting requirements, so it is vital to fulfill every reporting requirement your agency has in accordance with your grant. Okay, so you guys got a peek at the reporting schedule that was shown, and this is a table that details the time frame for each reporting period, the type of data required, and the due dates for submitting it in the PMT and the grants management system. You will enter program performance measures every quarter, and you will enter responses for the narrative section twice a year during the April through June and October through December reporting periods. This table can also be found in the PMT on the Information and Resources page as well, which we will go over later on in the presentation. As a reminder, the PMT is accessible year-round for data review, report generation, account creation, and more, but data entry is only scheduled for the month following the close of a reporting period, and that is based on the scheduled PMT due date. If you need to edit any data outside of those scheduled reporting periods, you will need to contact the PMT help desk. So now let's get into the specific functions of the performance measurement tool. So what exactly is the PMT? The performance measurement tool, or PMT as it's commonly referred to, is the online data collection tool for Office of Justice Programs grant recipients. It is structured as an online questionnaire and is available year-round. The PMT contains lots of information and tools to assist you in your reporting, so let's take a look. And here are the sections we will be covering for the rest of the presentation, which range from creating a profile to creating a report. And again, as a reminder, if you have any questions, the BJA PMT help desk contact information will be listed at the end of the presentation, so you can receive all things PMT, the most up-to-date guidance, and most accurate guidance on the PMT from the help desk. To access the performance measurement tool, visit the PMT single sign-on page at ojpsso.ojp.gov. The single sign-on page allows multiple OJP grant recipients to access all of their awards using one username and password. So, for example, if your organization receives funding from both BJA and the Office of Victims of Crime, you can log in with one username and password and access both of those PMT applications. The point of contact listed for each federal award in the grants management system is also considered the primary point of contact in the performance measurement tool, and they will be the first person who will have contact with the PMT system. If this individual is not already a registered PMT user, they will receive an email from the PMT with instructions on how to create a new account when contact information is updated in the PMT. The point of contact may then add additional users who will also receive a registration link to set up their own account as well. As a note, you must be a BJA grantee or subrecipient to set up a username and password, and all individuals must have their own unique username and password, so please do not share accounts. Once your unique account is created, enter your registered email address as your username along with your password to log in. Here's an example of the email new users will receive when their account is created. To set up a new user account, click on the link shown in the email. The password you create is based on OJP security requirements and is similar to the policy used by other DOJ sites such as GPRS and GMS. Passwords must be at least 12 characters and contain at least one uppercase letter, one lowercase letter, one number, and one special character. If you request to have your password reset, you will not be able to use the same password you used before. On the homepage, you can update or change your account information by clicking on the corresponding links. Once you have verified that all of your account information is up to date, click BJA PMT to continue. The first profile page of the PMT displays the various awards your organization receives from a particular OJP program. If your organization receives funds from various sources within BJA, you will have access to multiple profiles. The picture on the slide depicts an organization who receives funding directly from BJA, which makes them a grantee, and who also receives funding from another grantee, so that would make them a sub-grantee. To continue to enter or edit data, select the grantee or sub-grantee profile you want to report on by clicking on the plus sign and then your organization's name. As a note, you will not see this page if you only have one PMT profile or award, but instead be brought right into the performance measurement tool. If you are logging into the PMT for the first time, the system will direct you to the profile page. The information on this page comes from GMS, and if any of it is incorrect, please contact the Grants Management System Help Desk and submit a grants adjustment notice to make changes to your point of contact or otherwise. After you do that, please make sure to inform the PMT Help Desk along with your BJA Grant Manager of the changes made. Having accurate contact information listed in the PMT is extremely important so that your organization will receive email updates, reminders, notices, and other necessary user materials. If others within your organization also need access to your award, you can do that on the profile page by selecting the Manage Users button. You should only add users who need access to BJA PMT, as the system will automatically send that individual an email with access to your award. If you are a returning user, you will be directed to the Information and Resources page. This page gives you access to important documents regarding your grant program, such as a user guide, frequently asked questions, a copy of your program performance measures, and any program updates. You should keep in mind that you can access the profile or Information and Resources page at any time that you are logged into the PMT. And now is a good time to remind users that the PMT will time you out after 30 minutes of inactivity, so please be sure to press the Save button whenever it is available so that your data is not erased. Additionally, users should be sure not to use the back or forward button on their web browser, as that may produce system errors, but instead use the buttons within the PMT to navigate within the system. Reporting in the PMT is based on activity funded or supported by a federal award, which is shown in your federal award number column. If you have multiple BJA grants that are active at the same time, it is recommended and preferred that you close out one grant before the other one becomes operational. If there is any overlap between multiple awards where they are both active and supporting the same services and activities, your data should be prorated based on the percentage of grant funding, so please do not duplicate data. To begin the data entry process, click on the Federal Awards page. Its purpose is to give you an overview of data entry for all of your awards, both past and present. While you are logged into the PMT Help Desk contact information will be listed at the bottom of every page. To continue in your data entry process, click the red Begin Reporting Process, which is next to the reporting period and award number for which you wish to begin entering data. Before we get into the specific functions of PMT data entry, it is important to understand the different statuses that will be shown on the federal awards page. If a grantee has not opened their report or saved any data, the PMT will mark the report as not started. If a grantee has opened their report and begun data entry, but has not completed the questionnaire in its entirety, the PMT will mark the report as in progress. If a grantee has entered, saved, and completed every question in the report, the PMT will mark the record as complete. Not operational applies to grantees that indicated there was not grant-funded activity and no funds were expended during the 3-month reporting period. If a report is marked as not operational, it is considered complete and the grantee will not need to answer program performance measures. However, they will need to provide a reason of why the grant was not operational. Grantees who have subrecipients will also be affected by their subrecipient's report status. For example, if a grantee has completed their portion of their program performance measures, but their subrecipient is still in progress, the overall status of their report shown on the federal awards page will also say in progress. Thus, it is important to encourage all grant recipients at both the grantee and sub-grantee level to complete their report in a timely fashion. Once you click Begin Reporting Process on the federal awards page, you'll be brought to the Award Administration page. The purpose of the Award Administration page is to inform BJA about how you are administering your funds. On this page, grantees can indicate whether they use the funds all of themselves, whether their sub-grantees use all of their funds, or whether the funds are split between the grantee organization and sub-grantee organization. In addition, the PMT will also ask you whether this is the last reporting period of data you have to report. Select No to create a quarterly report, and select Yes to create a final PMT report. The final report is the last report you will generate in the PMT for a given award, so grantees should only select Yes if all funds have been expended prior to the last day of the reporting period. Otherwise, select No to proceed with your quarterly report. Next, you'll be brought to the grant activity page. The first question asked every quarter or reporting period is whether there was grant activity. If you answer yes, you'll be prompted to answer the program performance measures. If you indicated there was not grant activity, you will not be prompted to answer the program performance measures, but again, you will need to explain why no activity occurred instead. If there was no grant activity, your data entry status will show as not operational. Now is a good time to mention that not all grantees' reports will appear in the way shown on the slide, as this is just an example, but the data entry process is largely the same across the platform. To continue, press Save and Continue. By indicating that there was program activity during the reporting period, the PMT will then generate the program questionnaire. What's shown on the screen is an example of what the tabs may look like once your program is operational. However, it may vary depending on what program you're working on. Here, you will input responses to each one of the questions, and you must enter data in all fields for all required questions to move forward. In the event that a question does not apply to your program and you are not able to skip it or provide a value, you may enter a 0 to show that the question is not applicable to you during the reporting period. However, you must explain all 0 values that you report. The option to add a comment is provided at the end of your report so that you can clarify some of your data, and we will go over that later on in the presentation. Some sections of the PMT questionnaire include skip questions, which determine if you will need to answer additional questions or skip a section of questions entirely. If you need to answer the additional questions, they will expand in an accordion-style fashion. If not, no questions will appear, and you can proceed in your data entry session. The narrative section consists of several questions in which you can elaborate on your program for the reporting period. And again, as a caveat, if your PMT does not display what's shown on the screen, don't worry about it. The data entry process is again the same. The note on the screen reminds you that when entering data for the April to June and October to December reporting periods, regardless of your grant activity, you are required to answer the narrative questions. These questions are based on the previous 6 months of activity, and you have up to 5,000 characters for each response. On this page, you should also remember not to enter N/A or not applicable for these questions, as we have found that grantees usually have their reports returned to them for editing if they give that response or ignore these questions. And at the PMT Help Desk, we suggest that you enter about 2 to 3 sentences for each question. If you are closing out an award in the PMT and this is your last reporting period of data, the responses should reflect the grant activity since your last GMS report or submission of narrative questions. And this is an extension of the narrative questions that we showed on the last slide. If you, once you're done entering all of your data, you will have the option to mark your data as complete. You should be sure that you have reviewed all of your data and ensure that it is all accurate before you mark it as complete and generate a report. Once you check the box and mark your data as complete, you will not be able to make edits without contacting the PMT Help Desk. So please be sure again that it is accurate and final before selecting that box. Once you mark your data as complete and generated and select, once you mark data as complete, you will have completed your data entry session and you're ready to generate your report. After you select the Mark Data as Complete button and save your report, you'll be asked to create a GMS report. And again, as a reminder, this slide is for training purposes, so what you see when you go to create a GMS report may look different. After you select Create a GMS Report, a new window will appear with your report on the page. Select the red Export as a PDF file button to generate a copy of your report as a PDF, and this will generate your report in a new window. You should save that report onto your computer for record keeping, or if it's during the April to June or October to December reporting periods, save the report to your computer so that you can upload it as an attachment to your progress report, which is due in the grants management system in July and January of each calendar year. After you have saved your report to your computer, you should return to the Federal Awards page and view your data entry status for all of your awards. Ideally, they should all say completed and created, which is your confirmation that data entry is complete in the PMT report. Afterwards, you can log out of the PMT and prepare you and your organization for the next round of performance measures, data collection, and reporting. And during that time, you may also want to check in with your grant manager to determine if you have other reporting requirements as well. I will now go over a few frequently asked questions and helpful hints to guide you in your PMT reporting. Sometimes grantees will report that they have encountered an error message while they are completing their PMT report. As a reminder, you should be sure not to use the back or forward buttons on your web browser and use the buttons within the PMT to navigate within the system. You should also be sure that you have completed all of your data entry and haven't skipped over any steps in the data entry process. If the error message continues to persist, give a call to the BJA PMT Help Desk and we'll help troubleshoot. If you have lost some of your data that you reported in a previous data entry session, again, as a reminder, the PMT will time you out after 30 minutes of inactivity. So whenever the save button is available, please select it so that you will not lose your data. If you have a question about what a particular measure means, the PMT offers guidance on questions that are underlined in blue. So if you click on or sometimes hover over a particular measure, the PMT will then generate further guidance on how you should best respond to the question. If you need to edit data that you have already submitted, you will need to contact the PMT Help Desk, whose contact information will be shown on the next slide. If you need to update any of your contact information, you can also give a call to the PMT Help Desk, but you may also need to contact the GMS Consultative Grants Management System first and obtain a grants adjustment notice. If you see any red buttons in the PMT, those are indicators for you that highlights that further action is required on that page. So whenever you see a red button, similar to the Begin Reporting Process button that we showed earlier. Click on that button to proceed in your data entry session. And as promised, here is the BJA PMT's Help Desk contact information. Our office hours are Monday through Friday, 8:30 a.m. through 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, except for U.S. federal holidays, on which we are closed. We strive to return everybody's email and phone call within 24 hours, so please don't hesitate to leave a voicemail or email even after business hours. We will now leave the webinar open for about 5 to 10 minutes so that you can download any handouts that will be attached, or if you have any questions or comments, you can use the chat or Q&A box to reach out to us. And a recording of today's training will be posted in the future, so you can look out for that as well. And now, on behalf of the BJA and PMT team, we'd like to thank you for your time, dedication, and hard work. This concludes today's presentation.